This is the third tutorial in the series. In this tutorial, we are going to look at how to create a dashboard with interactive web controls like drop-down menus, radio buttons, and sliders. We are going to create a histogram of the old faithful geyser eruption data. For how to get started with RCAP, please see tutorials 1 and 2. To get started, we open up an empty RCloud notebook and enter the RCAP command. And remember that this has to be the last cell in the notebook. Now the first thing I need to do is to get the old faithful dataset from the Shiny library. Then I create a simple function called faith_hist with the following parameters. nbreaks, which is the bin size, ind_observation is a logical parameter and displays the individual observation as a rug when true. Dense is also a logical parameter and displays the density function when true. And bw_adjust will let us adjust the bandwidth. So we are going to develop web controls of the plot using these parameters. That is, provide a drop-down menu for the bin size, true-false radio options for the logical variables, and a slider for the bandwidth adjustment. The next cell sets initial values for the plot displays, as well as sets up the values for the drop-down menu. We will talk more about the drop-down menus a bit later. The next cell is a RCAP wrapper function that returns the plot function. This is the function that needs to be linked to the control on the design page. Now with our R code in place, we go to the designer from the advanced menu option. Let's design the header text and the plot as we did in tutorial 1 and 2. Now to add the web controls, we go to the widget library and select form from the HTML widgets. We click on the blue settings wheel to configure the control. Here we see that there are several controls to choose from, like drop-downs, sliders, multiple select, etc. The first one we are going to select is the drop-down and drag it to the design pane. Once there, we click on it to see the configuration options. Here we can label the control and declare the variable. Now for the drop-down. There are two ways to display contents of the menu. Manual fill-in versus an R function. If you remember, in this cell, we have an R function to display all possible values for nbreaks, and we are going to call that function here, and that function was called break_list. We save the settings. Now we are going to add a radio option button. We again select an HTML form, select a radio button control. We will name it show observation and put in the variable name. Here we are going to use a manual option as there are only two values, true and false. The last control we are going to do is a slider for the bandwidth adjustment. Again, we choose the HTML form and choose a slider control. We fill in the control name and the variable name. We put in the slider parameters and save the settings. Now save the designer settings as well and exit the designer. This gets us back to the RCloud notebook. We choose rcap.html from the shareable link button on RCloud and run it. We have our dashboard with interactive web controls. We can change the number of bins based on the function we had created. We can choose to show the rug plots or not. And we can also change the bandwidth by using the slider. This concludes tutorial 3.